What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/StoriesAboutKevin. Alright, our first story for today is called A Religious Kavina. True to my word, I'm back with more stories. A couple of you seem to like my post about Pretty Kavina, so here are some true side splitters about a Christian Kavina. Let's call her Kit Kat, that's cute. Also, keep in mind that in all of these stories, she is 16, so doesn't exactly get a pass for being a dumb kid. She's still just as dim as she was at 16.
Why not? Forrest Gump did it.
One day in PE, we were limbering up for some triple jump when Kit Kat declared to me that she was going to run across the entirety of the UK without stopping one day. Now, not to bash her at all, but Kit Kat wasn't exactly in shape. Think Kit Kat Chunky. So if her doing this with abs of steel was improbable, there was no way she was doing it at 200 pounds. I asked her how she intended to do this, since she'd need money, she ignored that part, and she'd obviously have to stop for food and sleep. So she said,
Well, aside from sleeping and eating and going to the loo, I guess, but I only need to sleep for like 2 hours.
2 hours? 2 hours of sleep per night to run the entirety of the UK? I then asked her how long she thought this would take, and she said no more than a couple of weeks. I asked her why the hell did she think that was possible, and she said,
Well, Forrest Gump did it, and it took him like 3 minutes in the movie, so it can't take that long.
Kit Kat, it's a film. It's not real. Tom Hanks didn't actually run across the US, he just ran a couple of minutes in different areas, and then it was all spliced together. It didn't happen. Kit Kat didn't like that I was crushing her dream and decided to storm off and tell everyone how awful I was being by telling her she wasn't going to be Forrest Gump. You can guess whose side everyone else was on, too.
How would it even get in? The hole is so small.
That's literally what she said. As schoolgirls often do, we were all casually talking about periods, and I mentioned that more of the girls should start using tampons. We were all 16, and a surprising amount of girls still weren't using them out of fear or stigma. Anyways, I was saying they should use them since they're so efficient and make periods a less messy process to deal with. Kit Kat is immediately grossed out by this and says,
Ew, tampons are disgusting. It's not right. It's like using
a fake pleasure device.
It's like having sex with yourself. Bleh.
I was totally bewildered by the fact that she thought wearing a cotton tube was like having sex and started laughing. Not at her, but just at the fact it was such a ridiculous thing to say. I told her it was nothing like sex, and what did she think? That girls were inserting tampons and climaxing from them all day? She just huffed at me and carried on with her work. But after class, she and I went to the toilets because she wanted to ask me some questions about it. I guess she was too embarrassed in front of our classmates. She asked me how it worked, so I told her. And I said to her that if she was confused, that there is a pamphlet you get with diagrams on how to insert it with every box of tampons you buy. She started to nervously giggle at the word insert and said,
Ew, 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 how would you even do it? It would be so painful.
I tried to explain to her that when you're bleeding, it'll just glide in quite naturally. But she continued to ew and blah, and said,
How do you even know where to put it? I've never seen down there, and how would you even get it in? The hole is so small.
It was at this point that I found out that Kit Kat, despite having 4 lessons about the reproductive system in our regular science classes, as well as having gone to all sex ed classes, ironically my family are atheists, yet I was pulled out of all sex ed, whilst Kit Kat, the Bible-thumping Christian, wasn't. She had no idea there was a second hole, aka the vagina, and thought you bled out your urethra despite having never seen blood come out of it. Edited to add that this is the UK sex education and reproductive education, which goes into much larger and more accurate detail than the US. Generally, I'm aware some American schools do sex ed well, but generally it's not as good as European sex ed, and doesn't feature any of that abstinence-only BS. We learned about female internal and external anatomy on the first day of doing reproduction, so there was literally no excuse for her to not understand it, especially when she was an A and B grade student who got good grades in science despite her idiocy. I was so damn confused and wanted to ask her how the hell she thought she was gonna have sex or a baby if she thought her urethra was her vagina, which she didn't think a tampon would fit into, but at this point I was beyond done. This post is getting long, so if you'd like to see a second post post, please update so I know if I'm wasting my time or not. So the next one will feature superhuman sperm, princes, and mermaid babies. Religious Kavina, part 2. I don't know how many people are going to read this honestly, but for all those who were anxiously awaiting this post, hello! The amount of reminders people had said in the comments of my last post was amazing. I'm so glad you liked my post and wanted to hear more. Once again, just so there's some context, Kit Kat, the Kavina, and I were 16 in all of these stories. Anyways, let's get into it. One day my prince will come. Kit Kat liked to convince herself that boys loved her, especially the popular ones. Now, keep in mind, as mentioned previously, Kit Kat was something like 200 plus pounds short and didn't come off that sane in daily conversation. We were on the school field one summer day when she told me she had a boyfriend. I was shocked, since for the last year she'd been banging on about this boy, Sam, who was obviously in love with her. He was best mates with the most popular guy in school and very much taken. When I asked how they met, she said online. Immediately, I was suspicious. This was back in 2014 when online dating wasn't so popular with teenagers and dating apps were yet to reach their peak. She told me they'd found each other in a music forum. Her dream was to go to music school, and that he was in fact a German prince. Yes, and she believed him. She went on to explain how he was the Prince of Berlin, that he also wanted to go to music school, and that very soon maybe they could meet up here. Our town is extremely crap. Nobody important would ever come here, so a prince coming down was unimaginable. She carried on believing this until we finished school. To this day, I don't know what came of it, too.
Can sperm teleport?
The boys at our school were notorious for harassing the less popular and more awkward girls in our year, me included, and would constantly invade our personal space. One lunchtime, one of the guys decided to dogpile onto Kit Kat, and several lads followed suit. Now, to be fair to her, it was nasty, and I knew how gross and invasive that crap felt because it happened to people like her and I on a regular basis. So out of sympathy, I told them to F off and pulled her up on her feet. Instantly, she started crying and screaming, which was a little much since it was just the usual BS we were used to. I asked her what was wrong, and she cried,
I'm pregnant! Oh my god, I'm pregnant!
What now? I looked at her and said, but Kit Kat, you haven't had sex. You're not even dating anyone. I thought you were like a devout Christian anyway. She shook her head and through toddler tears said,
No, he humped me! Jake humped me! His sperm, can it teleport? Yes, it'll have traveled through his trousers and impregnated me! I'm gonna be a mom! I'm not ready! I've not even done my GSEs yet!
As established in the first post, despite having an amazing sex education, which Kit Kat was present in all lessons for, and having an exam which involved questions on reproduction and coursework which Kit Kat passed everything on, she was not the brightest crayon in the box of sex. What? I tried to explain to her that not only is it basically impossible for sperm to get through that many layers of clothing, but how on earth would Jake do that from 3 seconds of joke, though not at all funny, humping her? She didn't listen, however, and was hysterical all the rest of the day. 5 years later, I still wonder if she believes sperm possesses such superhuman powers, or that she's so sexually magnetizing that men will just do that from just brushing over her. So many questions. 3.
I'll have mermaid babies, you'll see!
Art was always a special lesson in GSCE because people really wanted to be there and generally got on with their work. So the teacher allowed us to have relaxed chats and giggles during lesson time as we worked. It made for some great fun and also some interesting debates. For most of the year, I was sat on a table of 4 with my best mate on my left, Kit Kat opposite me, and best mate's friend opposite her. I don't remember how it came about, but we started talking about having kids. Kit Kat pipes up and tells us she's gonna have kids at 30 and have a natural birth. Kit Kat was a massive wimp who cried at everything, so I asked her why on earth she'd want that when she'd be in severe pain.
Well, so I can have mermaid babies! They'd be born in a pool so they'd be able to breathe underwater!
This was the best thing I'd ever heard come out of her mouth. I asked her what on earth she was on about, since humans didn't have gills. She said to me that of course they did. They breathed in the womb in the amniotic sac for 9 months, so of course they had gills. The problem was that when they're born, they're exposed to air, so they lose their gills and become land animals. I know. A 16-year-old devout Christian girl who'd not too long ago done evolution in science with us, despite not believing it and saying she was only learning because it was compulsory, was very wrongly telling us how evolution worked. I was in hysterics. Kit Kat, we just did this in pregnancy too, remember? The baby receives oxygen from the mother through the placenta. Not to mention the fluid in the sac is mostly fluid in baby's pee, not pool water. Kit Kat ignored this and told us that no matter if we were so adamant that evolution was real, then she could just give birth in a pool, hold her babies underwater, and they would develop gills. I was crying, falling out of my chair and clutching my stomach in agony. Kit Kat, you're gonna be a baby killer! Evolution occurs over thousands of years, not minutes! 15 years from now, we're all gonna see you on the news and you'll be known as a crazy Christian lady who drowned her newborns because she wanted fish babies. You'll be the baby killer.
I'm not gonna be a baby killer. I'll give birth and hold my babies underwater and they'll get gills and be amazing mermaid babies. You'll see, I'll do it and you'll look so stupid and you'll have to say sorry to me.
The fact that she was so angry with me made it 10 times better. That might have been the reason why she moved tables, but I just couldn't stop laughing. When 10 years go by, I'll let you guys know if the baby killer rears her head. This story's called One of My Friends is a Kevin. Here's some of my favorite Kevin moments from him.
I'm so sorry if the formatting looks weird on desktop.
We were friends growing up and I still consider him a friend, but after graduating high school, we don't really hang out or talk much anymore. I still hear about him every so often from social media and mutual friends though. Anyway, I'll share some of the best stories over the years. His name isn't Kevin, but I'll refer to him as Kevin for anonymity's sake. In 7th grade, Kevin thought that the iPod Touch was waterproof. I asked him where he heard this from, and Kevin claims that he was told this by some forum on the internet. He tried to get me to run my iPod Touch under the bathroom sink at school, and I refused. Eventually, Kevin decides to use his own iPod Touch as the guinea pig. I tried to stop him, but Kevin was dead set on proving me wrong, so I eventually said, screw it, and we ducked into the bathroom between classes to test his theory out. I thought that Kevin would just hold the iPod under the water for half a second so he could say, "See, I told you so," but no, he drowns it, making sure the water got into every hole. He then tries to turn it on, and of course, it doesn't work. It got stuck on the boot up screen and then shut off by itself, never to turn on again. Kevin got all pissy that the internet lied to him and yeeted the now worthless iPod at the wall. He walked out of the bathroom in a huff, leaving the broken, soggy iPod on the floor. His parents bought him a new iPod Touch a few months later. In 10th grade, Kevin accidentally shot the ceiling of his room with one of those crappy shotguns you can buy for like $150. Kevin begged his parents to buy him a firearm, and eventually they relented. Kevin does not practice trigger or muzzle discipline at all. I wasn't there when it happened, but he told me the day after that he always kept around chambered in case crap popped off, and that he was screwing around with the gun in bed when he accidentally pulled the trigger with the safety off. At least nobody else was home when it happened. He had his firearm taken away and was grounded for a month while his parents had to foot the bill to repair the ceiling. Kevin knew he would get his gun back eventually, and he did, so in the meantime, he told me he'd, and I quote, "screw around with grandma's Glock to tide me over." Throughout the rest of our high school years, Kevin invited me to go shooting with him on several occasions. I politely declined every time. In 11th grade, Kevin got his driver's license in a brand new Chevy Spark. Within a month, he hit a curb which screwed up the alignment. A few months later, he T-boned somebody at the intersection leading to our school. Both parties were going pretty slow when it happened, so nobody was hurt. On top of that, Kevin is, unsurprisingly, a terrible driver. He's all over the freaking lane, he speeds all the time, he rarely looks when he's turning or switching lanes, and there's been more than one occasion where he's done 90 on rough, winding dirt roads that most people wouldn't dare do more than 40 on. In 12th grade, Kevin got into skateboarding. He never wore a helmet or any other kind kind of protection, and this came back to bite him hard. Kevin and his family took a vacation to Tennessee during winter break, and Kevin decided to bring his skateboard. One night, he decided to go skateboarding while the rest of his family ate at a restaurant. Kevin chose to skate down a steep hill with no helmet in the dark. He was going pretty fast when he fell off the skateboard and hit his head. He passed out and was found by someone driving by who called 911. Kevin was told that he was lucky he only suffered a concussion and needed a few staples in his head. Though Kevin still does go skateboarding, in a rare case of learning from his actions, he at least wears a helmet now. Not that it stops him from endangering himself or other people in several other ways, of course. Kevin graduated high school but dropped out of college after the second semester. Since then, Kevin has mostly just worked at Taco Bell while getting stoned every day. He's also bricked 2 PS4s and an iPhone while trying to hack them, yet his parents just bought him another device each time it happened. Kevin has long believed that possessing weed is legal as long as it's just a little bit, even though my friends and I try to tell him that it's still illegal where we live. He just says, "No, that ain't how it works. The cops can't really do anything if it's under an ounce, so it's legal." Kevin carries a baggie of weed and a one-hitter everywhere with him, yet somehow he hasn't been caught by his parents or the police yet. One of the few occasions that I hung out with Kevin after we graduated high school, we went to see Deadpool 2. He accidentally ripped the pocket of his very worn-out shorts, and out fell a one-hitter and a pocket device that induces pleasure on those who use it if they are male or have male genitalia. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.